The Cricut Knife Blade is a specialty blade that is compatible with the Maker and the Maker 3. It is a very versatile, amazing blade that I love using, and I really hope that this video helps dispel some of the intimidation that you may have with this blade and get it out of its packaging and into your maker. My name is Kaylee, and let's get clacking. So, the Cricut Knife Blade comes with its own housing. It looks very similar to the quick swap housing, but it is not compatible with the quick swap housing or the rotary blade. It is an extremely sharp blade, so please be careful when you're using it. And if you're wanting to be extra careful, you can put the cap back onto the blade to make sure that you don't hurt yourself. The Cricut has a 2.4mm clearance, so theoretically you can cut pretty much anything up to 2.4mm, though in my opinion there are some limitations as to what you can cut with a knife blade. The knife blade is extremely sharp, and like I said, it is a very versatile blade, but I wouldn't recommend cutting things like acrylic up to 2.4mm. Up to around 1mm or so you can probably get away with it, but anything more than that, there are other machines that can do the job far better, far quicker, and probably far cheaper as well. Now, you definitely need to make sure that you are using your purple mat or your strong grip mat when you're using the knife blade. This helps it to have everything stuck down properly, and you'll also need some masking tape or painter's tape or whatever the case may be to help stick it down. I just use ordinary sellotape, so it shouldn't really be too much of a problem if you don't have any of that other stuff lying around, as it should do the job just fine if you have a relatively new purple mat. The most important tip that I can give you when using the knife blade is especially to do your test cuts. I've seen quite a few people end up losing mats because they've cut too many passes and the blade has gone too deep and has cut right through their mats. Yes, it is a possibility. If you have a brand new knife blade and you're wanting to cut heavy chipboard, now this is probably the best tip that I'm going to give you. I've seen many people lose mats to the heavy chipboard setting in Cricut Design Space. It wants to do 24 passes, and that is far too many, especially if you have a brand new blade. Obviously, if your blade's a little bit blunt, then that might be a better cut setting for you, but if you've got a brand new blade like I had, 24 will cut right through your mat. So definitely make sure that you are checking your cut. You can pause it in the middle and resume when you're done, checking to see that it has not cut through yet. You can buy a replacement kit for when the knife blade gets dull if you've been using it a lot, and this will then allow you to twist off the cap, replace the blade, and put it back on. I unfortunately don't have one to show you, but I can show you a picture of what it looks like right here. You can do a calibration with the knife blade. So what you'll need to do is you can go to the hamburger menu on the top left hand side, click on calibration, and then click on knife blade. From there you'll load a piece of copy paper onto a mat, any mat, it doesn't matter, and you can load that into your machine and it'll cut different lines, and then you can select which line cut the cleanest. Now, full disclosure, I haven't done a calibration. You don't need to do a calibration to use your knife blade. It's obviously recommended to do it because then you'll get, the best cuts for your machine, how it's calibrated, and then you'll make sure that everything, cuts properly and looks really nice. So it shouldn't take you very long. So I would recommend just doing calibration. The knife blade is a very sharp, very thick blade, and obviously that's why it can cut through your much thicker materials. But because of the size of the blade, you won't be able to get very intricate cuts like you do with your premium blade, as an example. I wouldn't recommend designs that are finer than about 1 centimeter. I personally have had great results getting details as fine of about 1 centimeter or so, but like I said, you're not going to be able to get super fine details with this. As essentially what this blade does is it does multiple passes, so it'll cut the same thing in the same place over and over and over again to be able to cut through the thicker materials, so it kind of wears them down eventually. Because of the fact that it uses multiple passes, it does take quite a while to actually cut something with a knife blade. As an example, if you're cutting heavy chipboard, I find great results between 9 and 12 passes. So it'll take quite a while as it's obviously going quite slowly around and it's cutting the same thing over and over again. So depending on the complexity of your design, this may take several minutes. So it's very little setup, and then you can just let your machine run for a little while. I definitely wouldn't let it run unattended because you should be checking your cuts in any case, as you can't change the cut settings on your knife blade, which is a little bit of a problem for me, and you have to manually make sure that you're keeping an eye on how many passes it's done so that you don't completely destroy your mats. So when I'm cutting heavy chipboard, I actually use the chipboard setting. It's the 1.5mm chipboard, and I find that this works perfectly for my new blade and my heavy chipboard. When you're using the knife blade, you won't be able to use your cell phone or tablet. You will have to use your laptop or computer. You can still use Bluetooth, but you also need to make sure that the laptop or computer is not going to be going into sleep mode, because if it does, it'll lose the connection and your maker will stop cutting. You will also notice that when you're actually cutting with a knife blade, it lifts it up and it turns and it places it down again several times. Now what this is doing is, obviously because the blade is so thick, it can't turn in the design because it might be 2mm deep, which means that the blade will then end up cutting part of your design. So it actually lifts it up, turns it around and places it down in the correct direction to continue with the cut. And this is where the drive housing comes in handy, and where the actual pressure of the machine is so much better than other ones that I've used. And it's also why it can cut things like heavy chipboard, balsa wood, leather, acrylic, much better than any of the other ones that I've actually played around with. Now I want to show you a quick demonstration of how to use the knife blade. So I'm going to be cutting a door hanger, and as you can see it here on the screen, it's under 27 centimeters or so. So I'm going to make sure that my machine selection is set to the Maker 3, and then I'm going to click Make It. Going to select on a mat. You can pretty much leave it right where it is, and we can go to continue. Now, like I mentioned earlier, I actually use the chipboard 1.5mm setting because it has fewer passes and my blade is still pretty sharp, so it works very well. You need to also make sure that you move the star wheels all the way to the right. I've made that mistake before and it kind of chews up your board a little bit and it doesn't look very pretty. So make sure that you have moved your star wheels all the way to the right and that you're not loading anything bigger than 11 inches. But we are going to be using the Cricut chipboard, which is beautiful chipboard, and of course the strong grip mat. You can ignore this error message at the top here. If you want to get rid of it, you can just click no. Like I mentioned, I haven't done calibration and I haven't had a bad cut, but if you find that your cuts aren't coming out very nicely, then I'll definitely recommend calibrating. So I'm going to be taping the chipboard to the strong grip mat, making sure that it is very secure and it is not going to go anywhere, because we definitely don't want that. Then we load it into the machine, we click go, and then we watch it cut. Now it's going to do, like I mentioned, 9 passes, and it does give you a status update along the way on your design space. So if you want to keep track of it, it'll normally tell you how long it's going to take to cut. So I like to keep that in mind when I'm working with this kind of thing. And then it's nice because now you know how many passes you've done. So if you want to pause it and check, I mean, you wouldn't want to pause it on pass 3 or 4, but once you get a little bit further towards the end, like maybe past 9 or 10, you can then start thinking about checking the cut to make sure that it's actually cut all the way through. And of course you can see how this cut through perfectly. So the 12 passes was great for this one, and if we take the chipboard off the mat, you can see that it hasn't cut all the way through the mat. So that just reiterates the importance of making sure that the test cuts are right so that you get the perfect cut and don't waste your mats. If you're looking for some other Cricut Design Space tutorials, here is a playlist that may help. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more Cricut videos in the future, and remember, be kind to someone today. See you soon!